Of course, the feast of St. Stephen gives us the opportunity as we The Feast of St. Stephen gives us the opportunity to reflect about the love for enemies. You heard already 2 times this morning. One in the final prayer of the Lord's, the prayers, the morning prayers, and one in the Colletta, in the first major oration, in the first major prayer of the Mass. And, when I read that, I stopped, because this is the central theme of today, the central subject, love for enemies, because St. Stephen, he was praying for those who were there stoning him. And yet, even though we know, of course, that there is nothing more clear in the Gospel, like love for enemies. This is not a suggestion from Jesus. This is a command. If you read Luke chapter 6, you will see it very clearly, that at least a couple of times Jesus is clearly saying, love your enemies. And he explains why. He explains why you need to do it. So please, homework for today, Luke chapter 6. But this is not the subject that I'm going to talk about today, because love for enemies is, what we know. Let's talk about what we don't know, which is love for friends. Love not for the bad people, but for the good people. For those ones who are meant to be good people. Because this is the thing that Jesus is talking about in the Gospel. When he says that the brother will kill the brother, the father, the son. So in the context of the death of Stephen, the theme is the love for the enemies. In the context of the Gospel of today, which is Matthew 10, is the love for those ones who are meant to be your friends. And I asked for help to a Baptist pastor who was also stoned. Well, not really stoned, but as if he was stoned in 1968. And we all know this Baptist pastor because he was Martin Luther King, the Baptist minister who became the hero for the fight against racism, against racial divisions. And he says this. This is a very important sentence that also you can find very easily. And he says, it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and the indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. I will read it again. It may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. So the good people, silence, indifference. Oh yes, there was Stephen that was there being stoned, and there was the silence and the indifference of Saul. And it took the grace of the Lord to change his heart. That like a lightning hit him. And then several days. Then tears falling from his eyes, more than tears. There was something that was blocking his eyes. It was removed by the grace of God. And then Saul became Saint Paul. Doesn't it take the same thing for all of us? Because if this happened to Saul, and here Jesus is saying that the brother will put to death the brother, don't we do the same? Don't you put to death your brother? When you remove your brother from your friendship. So let us accept the gospel of today, which is for us, not for any other people, but for us who are here today. This is why we have this reading here, because the will of God, since the creation of the world, put this reading here for us today, here. So let us accept it. Let us accept the example of Stephen. Let us accept the conversion of St. Paul. Let us be here looking at the example of Martin Luther King, this Baptist minister who gave his life, who faced death, who faced the violence in order to give us this simple message. Love your enemies, and also love the good people who are supposed to help you in your fight, and they sit around in silence and